Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday Roast. It's Sunday the 13th of October. I'm Phil Carroll.
And I'm Kevin Hornsby.
How are you feeling then after that whirlwind trip to Zambia? You finally got over, not the jet lag, but the travel element, and thousands of kilometres in a car, on bouncy roads, bumpy roads, and then obviously quite a long flight back, or multiple flights back, connections. You got in about 4 a.m. I gather.
Yeah, I got back to the house about 4:30 a.m. I think. Had about three hours sleep, something like that, 4 hours sleep maybe, and then tried to sleep the following day or that day, but didn't work. So I had a good sleep last night. So back in the
back in the
back
room.
in the groove, hopefully. Yep.
Good. Okay, well, let's have a look at some of the news stories that have dominated the headlines this week. We've obviously seen the devastating news from the US, where Hurricane Milton has caused widespread destruction in Florida, bringing tornadoes, floods, and storm surges, with over 3 million homes and businesses left without power. Several deaths have been reported on the Atlantic coast, and St. Petersburg has lost its water supply. Some areas experience once in 1,000-year rainfall, with over 18 inches reported in Tampa and St. Petersburg. The storm is now moving into the Atlantic, but continues to produce hurricane-force winds and heavy rain. Emergency services are unable to respond to some calls due to dangerous conditions, and residents in Plant City are warned to avoid toxic floodwaters. So, looks like a biggie, doesn't it? I think it was a Cat 5 storm. Winds were up to 180 miles an hour, and it's pretty much devastated most of that. I mean, I think it missed like Naples down right at the bottom in Miami, but if you look at Florida, it took pretty much all of the northern part or the central to the northern part up through Tampa. So devastating one. But I think it just seems like that with global warming and as the waters warm up, obviously the warmer waters creates more evaporation, which are then absorbed into the atmosphere, which then the storm goes over the waters, and then obviously you get the uplift, and then effectively you're getting stronger and bigger storms from this.
Yeah. The thing is, when we look at time, okay, we're only looking at the time that we knew things, which is probably the last 200 years. What happened before that? We don't know, is the reality. We know a little bit, but we don't know that much. So we don't know whether this is normal or abnormal in terms of the time frames that we're talking about. Because 100 years in terms of the length of time that we often talk about, even in geology, is very, very short. So but it's not good. It's definitely not good. We're talking about a storm on one side of the earth, and actually there's just human destruction on the other side of the earth. What's happening in Lebanon is a disgrace. What's happening in Gaza is a disgrace.
It just seems to get worse and worse, doesn't it? And I think you've got the US in talks with Iran directly, because it appears that Israel simply will not. There's definitely not going to be any talks there. So we'll see what comes out of that one. There was also news on Friday of Labour set to introduce a 150-page employment bill aimed at delivering on its election promises of enhancing workers' rights. Did you see the bill? Effectively, they gave 8 reasons that employers can use to refuse a flexible working request. Number 1, extra costs that will damage the business. Makes sense. The work cannot be reorganised among other staff. Kind of makes sense. People cannot be recruited to do the work. Flexible working will affect quality. Again, debatable. Flexible working will affect performance. Again, not convinced. The business will not be able to meet customer demand. There is a lack of work to do during the proposed working times, and the business is planning changes to the workforce. So it seems like I wasn't really aware. I don't know. I didn't know if you knew, but the right to switch off even existed. Like, I've been employed for 25, 30 years. And I was always under the impression that you had the right to switch off from work in terms of, weekend comes or you take a holiday, you could switch your phone off, or you were, setting out of office for your emails. I didn't realize that it was not a right, you know what I mean? That you didn't have that right to do that. It came as a bit of a shock that they're actually having to fight this and create a bill for it.
Yeah, seems a bit crazy, doesn't it? seems a bit crazy, but big capital, big companies, big everything is now starting to control people's lives, and it's not good, obviously. So yeah,
What
there
about the
you go.
4 day? What about the 4 day week? Do you think that'll ever? Because they've done tests in all over Europe now, thousands of companies where they put the staff in 4 days, potentially gave them a Monday off or a Friday off. Obviously, increase the working hours to be 10 to 12 hour days. So adding in the effectively, adding in extra time to make up for those whatever it is, 38 hours or 40-hour week. And they said staff were much more productive in the time they were at work. They were more productive. They enjoyed more downtime to spend time with their families, maybe running the kids to school, give them a little bit more of an impression of having more downtime. What do you make of that? Do you think that there is a precedent to set there?
Well, it's true, isn't it? I mean, as business owners ourselves, even when we're running the roast, we try and do things around what we want to do. But if we know, like, I want to travel on Friday up to the north coast again, so we're trying to pack everything in and do it all on the Thursday or the if we have to do things on the Friday, we will, but it'll only be a short term thing. So it's more giving people like an entrepreneurial view of their job, isn't it? And I think that can only be a positive thing.
Yeah,
Even when I worked for a big company, the working hours were never dictated because often I would have worked from 9 in the morning till 10 or 11 at night before I got back home. So did that mean I went in the next morning at 9 o'clock? No, probably not when I was able to because I
yeah,
needed to rest or whatever. So go in the next morning, 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, because that's when the work was starting and we were doing it. So, yeah, I think flexibility can be nothing but a positive thing for most businesses. Even the guys that work with us here, if we need to do something at 10 o'clock at night, then we ask.
yeah. It's
Uh,
interesting, isn't
but
it?
they're
Because
not working 40 hours a week,
no,
50 hours a week during the week, but we're asking somebody to do something at a certain time because that's just the right time to do it, if you like, or the right time that
yeah.
things come up.
It's interesting with now, during COVID, obviously, that people had no choice other than to work from home. Obviously, those who were not essential workers, who could do the job from home and weren't doing public, train drivers, whatever, it's basically more like civil servants. But ultimately, what they've done now, some of these big corporations have said from end of November or end of January next year, you will have to go back to the office 5 days a week. We've had enough of it, flexible work. And it's like a complete U-turn. It's like people have got into the habit of working from home and now they're being forced back to the office.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to be fighting, kicking, and screaming, aren't you? Because you don't want to go and do it because you've had the freedom. It's like,
Absolutely.
would you want to be employed again? No way. No
No.
way. After you've been self-employed or even had a much more flexible working life, then there's no chance you'll want to be employed again.
Yeah.
You would probably take less to be not employed again, rather than more. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a easy one.
Okay. Well, we've got a busy show this week, so let's move on to our
You
first
need to
guest.
give the power back to the workers, but they're not going to get it.
Oh, was that a segue? Was it in from Power? Okay, I got what
My
you
my
did then.
talent is wasted on you.
Oh my word. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to our first guest this week. We've Shaun Wade, CEO of Power Metal Resources, Oliver Friesen, CEO of Guardian Metal Resources, Jack Dann, Technical Director of Power Metals Resources Canada, and Bill Brodie Good, Non-Executive Director of Power Metal Resources. It's a smorgasbord this week, so welcome, gents.
Thanks,
Two
Bill.
fellas.
Okay, so Power Metals Resources under Shaun's leadership is focused on large-scale metal discoveries globally, with significant interests in North America, Africa, Saudi Arabia, and Australia. One of their key holdings is a 45.26% stake in Guardian Metal Resources, whose CEO, Oliver Friesen, is here to talk about their flagship Pilot Mountain project in Nevada, home to the largest undeveloped tungsten deposit on American soil, an increasingly critical asset given America's goal to reduce reliance on foreign sources for defense metals like tungsten. Also joining us, Jack Dann, here to bring us his insights on the energy sector and strategic partnerships. Got a lot to discuss, from the future of critical metals to strategic developments that could shape the industry. So welcome all. Shaun, let's start with Power Metals and the recent news regarding the formation of a uranium-focused joint venture with UCAM involving Power Metals' entire portfolio of uranium licenses. UCAM's initial £10 million investment grants a 70% stake in Power Metals' Canadian subsidiary, with potential for an additional £4 million based on performance.
That's right, and thanks, Phil. And it's great to have another chance to talk about it. This is a flagship deal for us. It's a very strong validation of our business model. As I think we discussed a few times, what we seek to do is to enhance the value of our assets through exploration work and seek to crystallize that value through various forms, which can be IPOs. And we're going to go on to talk to Oliver about how Guardian Metal's been a roaring success. But that's not the only game in town. And in the case of the UCAM deal, we've entered into a joint venture with a very experienced and very globally significant resource investor who's making a major financial investment into that asset set and giving us a fantastic chance of making commercial discoveries, which and Jack's going to talk about what the plan is and how we're going to go about that. So, from the sort of power metal topco, as it were, what shareholders are looking at, I think, is very considerable inherent value in the business, where we have these valuable sets of assets and where we are either in the process of crystallizing that value, and we've talked a little bit about first development resources, for example, or in two cases where we've done that already, and we're seeing that value start to accrue to us, and that's Guardian Metal, and now, of course, UCAM. So it's a very exciting development. As I say, it's fundamentally based on the principle of making discoveries in uranium, and you mentioned at the top there the positive dynamics for the uranium commodity as a whole. But I think the added to that is the fantastic upside that all exploration companies get from commercial discoveries, and that's obviously what we're focused on. So, I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by the guys on this call who will run those various parts of the business for us. In addition to all of that, of course, we should mention what we're doing in the Arabian Shield, which Bill is running for us, and we've made fantastic progress in just a year of operating there. We've signed 4 agreements already, 3 in Saudi Arabia, 1 in Oman. We're well advanced with our conversations on funding. And we can pick that up maybe later in the call as to how we're looking to go about that. But I think what your listeners are going to want to hear is what are the geological opportunities, what are the types of deals that we can expect, and what's the kind of scale of that business. But that's probably enough for me for now. And I think you probably want to move to Oliver, I think.
Yeah, I just want to say to you, just before we move on to Oliver, obviously Guardian Metals sort of spun out over a year ago now. How happy are you with the way things have progressed since the IPO?
Well, I couldn't be happier. I mean, Oliver is absolutely, well, I would say he's delivered. I mean, he's massively over-delivered. I mean, the principle of investor relations, I always think, is to under-promise and over-deliver. I think there's a great test case right there in Guardian Metal. He's been extremely measured and sensible on the way he's communicated. He hasn't at any point ever sort of over-promoted it, but he's done a fantastic job with investors to get them comfortable with the story, to get them to understand it, and the value has flowed through, and it's performed extremely well. And as everybody knows, it's now our stake is now more or less our entire market cap, which I think we've discussed a few times. So I'm sure that gap will close, and obviously what we hope is that we go up rather than they come down, obviously. But there's continuing success with the project, which Oliver can talk about. But as far as does the strategy work, and are we pleased we've done it that way? 100%. I mean, we would not have it any other way.
Over to you, Oliver. Yeah, give us your thoughts on that, please.
What if we both go up, Shaun? Is that a possibility?
That's an idea. Yeah.
No, well, thank you for the kind words. That means a lot. But yeah, I mean, I'd say it's definitely a mutually beneficial agreement. I mean, Power obviously has a fantastic name and a fantastic following here in the UK, and we benefit from that exposure being a spin out from Power. So very large supportive shareholder, and we get sort of the added benefit of the kind of large following who knows about us as well. So it's been exciting year and a half. We IPO'd almost a year and a half ago now on Kevin's birthday, as he reminds me, about 8 million times. So May 10th. And, I think we're just getting started here. The first year and a half has been a bit about kind of putting the building blocks in place. But now some of the bigger catalysts that we're really excited about, I think, are going to come to fruition here. And 2025 should be a really exciting year for the business.
So, Oliver, tell us what has happened since that time. So what progress have we made in now, which was Golden Metal Resources, to Guardian Metal Resources?
Yeah, I mean, I could take up probably a full hour just running through the progress, but I'd say kind of the highlights have been the fact that we've, put a lot of really important building blocks in place for Pilot Mountain, our flagship asset. From a macro perspective, I think tungsten has progressed tremendously in the last year and a half. Really when we IPO'd, it was difficult for people to understand what tungsten was and why they should care about it. Now I have people reaching out to me and saying, hey, I've been hearing about tungsten. How can I get exposure? And that really has happened in probably the last 6 to 9 months, which was really, I think, there was some really on the back of the antimony ban is probably what it was that happened out of China the last few weeks, is what has pushed people to understand that China really is weaponizing the supply chains and realistically what could be next. And that has put a lot of spotlight on tungsten, which puts us in a good position. But, macro aside, we've pushed the projects forward. We've done a lot of what I consider to be sort of low cost but high impact exploration across Garfield, across Pilot Mountain. We've added a lot of new, really exciting targets to our inventory. We've also commenced the drilling campaign, which started back in May. That program is ongoing. We've put out 2 sets of drilling results, including what's the best drill result ever achieved on Pilot Mountain to date, and that's only hole 13. Drilling's ongoing, and then a lot of macro stuff as well, as I mentioned, has been happening, and I think there's a lot more to come here in the next couple of months and into 2025.
Very good. So the catalysts that are ahead for you for GMET, I mean, we've seen share price go up to high 30s. You've taken money in from US investors at 27p and have a market cap well into the £30 million mark now. Where are you going to be in 12 months, 24 months time in terms of not just Pilot Mountain and Desert Sheelite, which obviously we've had a pretty historic drill hole gone into that, and you've moved back to that now to focus. But where can you see the progress of this within the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think we picked up on this yesterday or the previous podcast, but the reality is, there's a lot of pressure on domestic mining companies and exploration companies to get these projects, these defense metal projects, as close to production ready as possible. I actually just saw a tweet go out a few minutes ago about China sanctioning a handful of U.S. defense companies, and this sort of tit for tat trade war is not going away. So the reality is, the pressure is on for companies like Guardian Metal as owners of this really strategic asset that has massive national security implications to get through kind of the permitting, get through the all the various economic studies required, so we can be in a position where we can hit go and start to produce tungsten for the U.S. market. So within the next 12 to 24 months, the PFS is obviously front of mind for us right now. So the drilling we're doing, all the environmental work we're doing will build towards the PFS. So we'll try to get that done. Our intention is to have that done sort of by Q2, Q3, 2025. And then we'll very quickly move on to the next steps, which will allow us to get closer to the position where we can answer the port of call, which is, hey, we need a domestic source of tungsten. We have tungsten in the ground in Nevada. Let's be part of the solution here. So that's what we're looking to do over the next kind of 12 to 24 months. And there's going to be a lot of other news across the portfolio as well. We have some other great assets, but the tungsten story right now is gaining so much momentum, and we know we're in a very unique position as 100% owners of this asset.
And just so people have a better overview, you got tungsten, you got copper, you got silver credits, you've got garnet. That's a Pilot Mountain. But you also have Garfield, the cat, that is coming up as well, where also there is gold, copper, potential porphyry situations, or maybe not, it's not potential anymore, maybe it is porphyry. You can correct me on that. And then one of the reasons why the company was formed in the first place was Golconda. And you still haven't drilled, and I keep poking you and saying, get a drill hole in it, please. So just explain to people what else is in the portfolio. And the second part of the question, so I don't have to ask you another question, is how is this going to play into the American market investors? Because surely they're going to be interested in this proposition. Yes, it's listed on the UK, but it's also listed in the OTC market. And this podcast is also going to go out to the OTCB members as well. So just give them an overview of what it is you're going to be doing.
Well, just to answer your second question first, I mean, this is the reshoring and onshoring efforts that are happening across the U.S. right now for defense metals specifically is something that Americans care deeply about, as you can expect. So, we're looking to push that narrative forward. The first year and a half of being a publicly listed company, a lot of the marketing focus was on the U.K. and building a good name for ourselves here. But I think we've certainly established that now, and that kind of allows me to take some of that bandwidth that normally would have gone into UK marketing and shift that to the American audience. And obviously some big kind of macro catalysts in the background could be a good impetus to really get this story across the, the various kind of US, airwaves. So we're working on that right now. It takes a few months, obviously, to kind of get that moving. But a lot of the work we're doing now is on the US front and getting this story in front of American investors. And to answer your first question, I think you kind of put it quite nicely there, Kev. Our focus is on tungsten. There's no two ways about that. That is the metal that we have the most of in the ground right now in situ, but also the metal that we think is the most important going forward. And we're afforded such a unique position here as owners of the 100% owners of the largest tungsten deposit on U.S. soil. But as you mentioned, and importantly, it's not just tungsten. At POW Mountain alone, in our mineral resource estimate there at Desert Shielite, we have copper, silver, and zinc. Some really nice credits there. We're looking at the garnet potential, the gold potential there. Golconda Summit, fantastic Carlin type gold opportunity. I'm tempted to drill that myself as well, Kev, and certainly it is permitted, and we would be in a position to do that. But we need to, as a board, be mindful of the fact that we are in a very unique position as owners of this tungsten asset, and how do we kind of manage the progress there, but also make sure that the other assets are moving forward as well. So we're trying to juggle a lot of balls right now, and hopefully we can get to Golconda sooner rather than later, because it's a really exciting one.
So, Shaun, have you anything to add to that? Your baby that has been birthed has become a teenager.
Well, I
we need to take it to adulthood. What would you say?
I think he's rather more than that, because not only is he off the payroll, he's actually he's going to be paying my bills. So no, I think it's hugely successful. We're a very close team. We all work together across all of our projects, and we all support each other on the various other things that we do. So it's a very much a shared endeavour. So Oliver's led this and to great success, and it's something that we all share in, and it's extremely exciting. So I just hope that the value will accrue to all of us, and that Guardian will continue to perform as well as it is, and that investors who perhaps like their, well, since we're talking about Sunday roast, they like their full fry up rather than just their bacon or whatever, will perhaps look at power as well as the as the portfolio business that has a piece of all of it. So yeah, look, I think it's the model is in great shape, and we've got lots more to do. We by no means have we sort of set the sails yet on the model and what we're trying to do. There's a lot more to come, and I think it's probably a good opportunity maybe to drill a bit deeper into the uranium business and hear from Jack about what the plans are there.
Yeah, that was good time to move on and bring Jack in as technical director of Power Metals Resources Canada, this new Canadian subsidiary that we alluded to at the top there. So, Jack, I mean, I'd like to hear your insights on this sort of what is now a vast array of assets within this Power Metals Canadian subsidiary. I'm assuming that you're the leading authority on it as technical director on these projects, and have presumably helped progress them and stake them over the last few years. So let's start with the recently acquired Drake Lake Silas property, which has now been vended into the joint venture, and then also run through the other projects within the the portfolio, namely Perch River, Tate Hill, etc.
Yeah, sure. So Drake Lake Silas is out in Labrador. It's not a particularly well-known area of uranium exploration, not like the Athabasca Basin and the northern Saskatchewan, like the other parts of the portfolio. But we've acquired an absolute stellar area. We are pretty close, I think, a kilometre away from a register, an inferred resource. We're a long trend of that. We've got some various bits of information in the background that we've planned some field work around that have enabled us to really target in and try and find potential extensions to this resource. Alongside that, there's multiple other bits and pieces on these properties that have been identified but never tested, or tested but not really tested to sufficient levels. And with the exceptional budget that we have, we're able to actually test those and look to move forward towards a discovery and eventually drilling on this property. Elsewhere, so moving back to Saskatchewan, we've of course got Perch River. We did a reasonably well-sized campaign there this summer. That was looking to try and identify targets towards drilling. It's one of our prime properties following some exciting work last year.
So we've got the notes on it as staked in summer 2023 hyperspectral data study highlighted helium anomalies potentially linked to uranium mineralization, helium or hydrocarbons, and combined helium radon soil survey completed with results pending.
Yeah, so we also looked at our assets outside the Athabasca Basin, including the Tate Hill project, where we try to refine in our really exciting results from last year on the Mullis Lake target, which is a potential rustling analogy. We also looked further to the north of the property where there's a similar anomaly. All the results are currently pending there with the laboratories, and we should be looking forward to discuss them in future. On Reitenbach, we were following up on a massive radiometric anomaly, and that property's had decades and decades of work on it, but no one's ever been able to really hone in on where we might find some significant mineralization, and our work is to do that and to identify more and drill eventually, ideally. Also on Thibault Lake, we conducted a radiometric survey. This was the first radiometric survey ever conducted on this property, alongside a magnetic survey, that was able to let us define and identify the fault structures that are really critical for this style of mineralization, this part of the area. And alongside that, we did a follow-up radon, soil, and biogeochemistry survey in a systematic manner. None of these properties have really had systematic, sensible work done on it, and in my opinion, it's the best way to try and identify areas. Just kicking around prospecting is a very inefficient way to explore in these districts, particularly with the incredibly high cost of access, helicopter and staffing costs. So we've done systematic work on the majority of the properties. Alongside that, we did a radiometric and magnetic survey on Soaring Bay. As you guys may remember, we had a major radon anomaly along the fault structure. That we managed to identify exactly where the fault is. We managed to identify significant radioactivity related to that, and we can then look to build on that in future years. And we've got plenty of work forthcoming. We've got a EM gravity and magnetic surveys proposed on the majority of the in-basin projects. So that includes Perch River that we spoke about a moment ago, East Hawk Rock, West Hawk Rock, which is just the south of Perch River, and in my opinion have been really underestimated and undervalued by previous operators. And then down in Badger Lake, which is about 36k from Arrow, massive discovery on Arrow about 10 years ago. We're then going to do a combined survey there and a soil survey that I'm hoping to go out and work with the guys on later in the month. So there's lots of work, and this initial program of work is there so that we can then build on and look towards drilling. You know, you can't just start with exploration from a running start.
So Jack, I've got some questions for you on uranium in general, okay? Because I'm Mr. Idiot when it comes to uranium, okay? So you talk about the word basin. Why is this subsequently a uranium basin? First question. Okay. Second question is, how is uranium shown in the ground, if you like? So in other words, we know that copper can come in certain ways. We know gold can come in certain ways. How do we know what uranium's all about?
So I'll start with the basin questions first. The Athabasca Basin, it's a large area of northern Saskatchewan, and it's a sandstone basin within what we call a cratonic lithology. Geologists use the term basin to mean a big depression in the earth. If you imagine your bathtub at home, we have got a bathtub full of sand, and at the bottom between where the sand and the cratonic lithosphere, the bottom of the bathtub is, these uranium deposits are formed. Some of them are formed in the sandstone, some of them are formed below it, some of them are formed at this contact, which is what we call an unconformity, and therefore these deposits are known as unconformity-related uranium deposits. This area is one of the world's premier production districts. You've got McArthur River there, Cigar Lake. It produces something like 30% of the world's uranium from just 2 or 3 different producing mines at the moment, alongside massive amounts of exploration.
So what happened? Did a big asteroid land in there that was uranium-based, or did it come up from the ground?
Not at all. So within the Athabasca Basin, at the billions of years ago, you had a fluid that was rich of uranium and was oxidizing. At some point, a reducing fluid interacted with that, where the reducing and the oxidizing fluid met, the uranium precipitated out and formed these massive high-grade deposits.
Okay, so the dumb version is A met B, went and uranium came out.
In effect, yeah. But surrounding that, there's various other geological processes.
Yeah.
There's alteration.
Same in copper. It's a redox front, effectively, isn't it? What you just described.
Yeah, it's a really fancy redox front. But unlike with copper, where you get 1 or 2%, or we can get up to 23% uranium, which is phenomenal. I mean, I've held the core in my hand from Phoenix, and I think it was high 20%. And
so do your hands become radioactive, or is this just me reading too many comics?
I've got 7 fingers on one hand, so maybe... No.
Okay, so that was the basin. The second question you've answered, I think, which was how is uranium formed? And I was being facetious saying asteroid hits the ground, but basically it's uranium coming up through the ground and oxidizing and then hitting something that brings it out.
The fluid in the basin contained the uranium, and then another fluid met it and dropped out. The uranium dropped out.
Yeah. Okay. Why is this basin, or why is this area so prolific for uranium then? Do we know this? Like, is there a general source? Is there tectonic plates moving across that means that uranium comes out, or any of those things?
I don't really know why it's so prolific. That's a question that geologists have been asking themselves for 50 odd years. These basins do attract uranium. So you've got another basin further to the north called Havieron Basin. That has a similar setting. You have the Ottish Basin in Quebec. It's just the fact that you've got these trapped areas of groundwater and another fluid meeting that precipitates out. It's just the Athabasca Basin is just phenomenal as opposed to just really good at the other two.
Yeah, I remember having a discussion with Oliver when we were talking about, and yourself, I think, when we were talking about the UEE situation. So how did this come about in terms of being able to stake these grounds, understanding these grounds? If this area is so prolific in uranium, surely somebody else would have staked it out before you.
They did. Sure. The majority of the basin's been staked out in the 1970s or before. You've got major producers there, Cameco, Denison, Orano, various big established explorers. I mean, Oliver started about 3 years ago. He staked out areas outside the basin where the land was open and the geological conditions were reasonable and formed up the backbone of our portfolio, Tate Hill, Soaring Bay, Tebow Lake. These exciting properties that we've done exploration in the last 3 or 4 years. We then looked to acquire properties within the basin. They were acquired when other operators, they don't make their spend commitments. So we have to spend about $15 a hectare each year on these properties. If you don't do that, you lose them. Other operators didn't do that. As we all know, the uranium market has been challenging for the last 10 years or so. So many people stake these properties, they did a bit of work, and then ultimately they weren't able to hold on to them. We swooped in, acquired those lands, and that's how we got Poach River, Badger Lake, Cardigan, Durrant Lake, etc. And then we've been able to push those forward. And with this funding from the JV, we're able to push these forward much further towards drilling and ultimately, ideally, a discovery.
So with this JV, with the UCAM, how is £10 million going to change the dynamics of what you can do in these? And is there a prize asset within this? Is there sort of, a pilot mountain type scenario here in terms of the uranium assets that are going into the JV?
Firstly, how will it change it? Money is really helpful in exploration, frankly. We have an awful lot of work to do, and exploration up in northern Saskatchewan is not cheap. The requirements for helicopter supported work really make lives a bit difficult in terms of keeping to a solid and tight budget. So it just enables us to do significant programs that are able to actually really test these features that we've identified the historical work and our work to date, and then capitalize on them as we move forward. The data we have on the properties at the moment and the work we've done has suggested there's some really exciting areas, but we need to test them more. We need to look towards drilling. Ultimately, it's sort of opened Pandora's box of work we can do rather than previously and potentially the other funding models that we may have been able to achieve with this portfolio, which wouldn't have been able to do that. And prize asset wise, everyone has their favourite child. I particularly quite like the Badger Lake project, and I like East Hawk Rock. But that's not to say that any of the other ones are not absolutely stellar. As I said before, we don't have a huge amount of work on these, and a lot of the work has not been done in a logical and a systematic way. It's just been guys going out and hitting rocks. So when you apply systematic techniques and modern exploration to them, we may well find when I get these assays back in a couple of weeks that there is absolutely stuff that surprises me. But generally, the in-basin properties are my prime interest, alongside Drake Lake Silas. And that's a really exciting asset that when we first saw it, when we first reviewed it, we knew we had to get it.
So, Oliver, you were one of the ones that obviously got your boots on the ground. So what's your thoughts on all of this? And you were the one who introduced us to UEE as well. So, give us a couple of minutes of your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I'm thrilled with the outcome, obviously. As Jack mentioned, the capital that's been unlocked here is really what's required to push these things forward. Such a large portfolio in this exploration business. It's really a numbers game, right? All it takes is one drill hole from one property to completely change the complexion of a business. So now we can do that with the amount of assets in the portfolio. And with the capital we can deploy, it's a lot of these properties are going to get drilled now. And that's what investors should be looking for, is the fact that one of those drill holes can change everything. And before we had this funding, obviously we were trying to bootstrap exploration and did a lot of really good work, uncovered a lot of really good zones, but this now takes it to the next level. So obviously, I staked the original kind of portfolio about 3.5 years ago. very counter-cyclical approach at the time. Uranium at $30, the staking in the basin and surrounding areas was a lot lighter than it is now. I can assure you of that. People can continue to pile on and pile on and pile on, but we staked our position many, many years ago, and obviously thrilled with the outcome that was put together here, and can't wait to see what some of the exploration and drill holes come up with.
And Shaun, what's your take on this? You've obviously been busting your butt over the summer to get this over the line. We're here, and how's it going to all work out?
Yeah, well, yes, it was a detailed process, and obviously with the addition of the Drake Lake Silas acquisition as well, that obviously made the process a little bit more complicated. But to be honest, although it did take a while, it's been on rails for some time. It was a very, very straightforward, friendly, and cooperative period of negotiation and execution. So I'm very happy with how the deal was done, as much as the fact that it was done itself. And we're really excited about working with our partner to make these discoveries that we've talked about. I mean, I think I said on the previous call, there's going to be a very straightforward and sensible governance structure. So there'll be a board, 3 people with me, one from the UCAM side and a chairman. We'll operate under a management contract, providing the finance function, governance, corporate function, etc. And obviously, Jack will oversee the technical work on the ground. So we'll be very, very, even though our shareholders will be 30% holder, we'll be extremely close to the action, and we'll be driving it. So we're looking forward to being able to report back and to talk about the discoveries. And just a point, I think you've got, I think I'm saying you've got Shaun Day on the show this week. And I mean, Shaun obviously is one of the most respected CEOs in our sector of the market, a man who's obviously generated enormous value for shareholders over the years, and someone we know very well. And, wouldn't necessarily put myself in the same category as him, except to say that to our shareholders, you've got 30% of this extremely exciting set of projects in Canada. And it's worth remembering that that's the same percentage that Greatland Gold had of the Havieron deposit that added such incredible value. So the fact that you've got 30% of it and none of the cost, you've got huge exposure to discoveries, I think is a recipe for fantastic success. So we're looking forward to coming back and saying more. Now, I think on that, unless you want to cover any more than you already, we've kept Bill waiting for a little while. So we'd like to talk a bit about what we've achieved so far in the Arabian Shield, and also what the opportunities and prospects that are there. And I think since we're focusing a lot on geology on this call, I think it's probably interesting to talk about what the commodity opportunities are in Saudi, because people think obviously a lot about gold and they think about aluminium perhaps, but perhaps less so about the other opportunities that now we're bringing up. So I don't know, Phil, if you want to lead us in.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a problem. So obviously we welcome Bill Brodie Good. Bill has over 30 years experience in global exploration, having cut his teeth in Australia, followed by working extensively in geological and project management in West and Central Africa, the Middle East, Central Asia, and returning to Australia more recently. So, Bill, welcome to the podcast. It's the first time we've actually spoken. So could you just give us a rundown of the assets within the Arabian Shield, please?
Yeah, sure, Philip. Thanks for the introduction. So we've, for the last just over a year, we started September last year as a strategy to complement the incredible assets already in the power metal resource portfolio. We sort of instigated Power Arabia to get involved in what's probably the biggest local investment globally. The Saudi government are investing up to looking at $2.4 trillion into the mining sector as part of their Vision 2030 vision, I suppose is the word. And they speak about mining now as their third pillar in the country, which is phenomenal. And I think the key is the Arabian Shield has incredible geology with huge potential for copper, gold, base metals, rare earths, really everything, and almost, I'd say probably 10 to 15% explored to date. They do have their own in-house mining entity, who over the years they're in production. They have a couple of gold mines running. They do quite a lot of phosphate and potash as well, and bauxite, but it's a vast area and a vast geological target that now is being opened up. So we've currently got 3 deals in Saudi Arabia. We felt, as well as looking at direct applications for licenses, I think Oliver touched on it, similar in the uranium space in Canada, there's such a demand that grabbing or acquiring new ground, fresh licenses is getting harder to do. It's still possible, but it does take longer. So our strategy was to talk to people who've got licenses, don't know what to do, don't have the technical ability, keen to partner up with a team like ourselves, with Jack and Oliver and Tristan, with that excellent, very broad exploration experience to advance these projects. And from our point of view, we're not third-party sort of consultants getting a fee, walking out the door at the end of the month. So we're engaging in earn-in processes whereby we're obviously engaged. We're very therefore precise on spend and how we approach, to add value every dollar spent. Again, as Oliver said earlier, all we need is that first drill hole, or that one drill hole in any of the projects to, bonanza drill hole. And it is a game changer for projects and for the group. So probably our flagship agreement is with Al Masani COBR AMAC, who are the largest listed Saudi Arabian mining company. So we have an agreement to develop their nickel sulfide project in the southeast of Saudi Arabia, only about 60, 70 kilometers from their existing mines. They have a copper and a gold mine. They are keen. They don't have, obviously they have a large team, but they don't have necessarily the experience or the capacity. So I think we've got a very strong arrangement with them, a good working relationship too. I've already been down there a couple of times, more on sort of initial site visits, but they also have other projects in the pipeline. They're growing their portfolio, being a dominant force in the country and a respected group in the country that we're hoping to at later date, develop more arrangements, more agreements with. So that's our flagship, but not to downplay. We have a agreement that's been started earlier in the year with Ruach Mawarid Mining, which is a sort of majority-owned subsidiary of EV Metals, Australian-based group. Their focus is to more on the downstream now. Therefore, we had an opportunity to take on the exploration, currently on 15 exploration licenses, 13 mainly centered on a Balthaga project area, focused areas for lithium, pegmatite-hosted lithium. We've done one field program, and we're just in discussion and planning, hopefully getting out next month to do a follow-up piece of work, and some news will come out on that in the next couple of weeks. Progress. They also a couple of other licenses in that agreement. One's for copper, and one is probably copper and gold as well. It's again, all these licenses have very limited historical information. The geology's there to a larger scale. You don't have detailed information to start with, but again, it's building that portfolio, building the relationship. On another, further along, they have another 25 to 30 applications in with the ministry. We believe with our involvement, getting work done, being on the ground, and frankly, one of the few foreign companies to be now doing exploration at the front end, we feel that relationship can build and are become known to the ministry, to the government, so that'll hopefully open doors for other opportunities as they come along. And then we recently signed an MOU with Saudi Mines for Mining, who really their main business is earth moving. So they actually are involved in the mining sector, but mainly on the earth moving contractual side. However, they have several contacts within Saudi Arabia, and this is a typical sort of target groups for us. People who have licenses, they pick them up in the sort of license rush. However, they have no real clue in terms of technical skill, what to do next. So we're currently looking at 3 projects that we would, through a sort of steering committee with this MOU, we would then in each case, based on the license holder's ambitions or strategy, to ideally have earn-in agreements on each one, and potentially we bring some funding, we do the work, we advance these to a point where either we can exit or we want to continue through. And that's very important, that it gives us an opportunity in each of these deals that we have an exit strategy if we feel we get to a point where if it goes then to, say, a more mining level of work, we might decide as a group we're going to keep focusing on the exploration. so we can exit. However, if we feel and we want to take it further to support, our investors' wishes, and we have the funds to be able to do that, then we still have that opportunity too. So we're keeping our options open. And then in Oman, we recently signed a HOT with Alara Resources and Etwad Copper LLC, who are set up by an Omani, one of the large Omani families, who specifically for area called Block A, which is a 500-kilometer square block in the northwestern copper ophiolite belt of Oman, highly prospective. So that has just been signed. We're finalizing the formal agreement. I've been working with our lawyers this morning just to get the final wording correct, get that signed off. And again, I was out there only last week, and we're looking to get back out there in 10 days' time to start a first bit of field work. And that's copper. They've identified some copper credits from some drilling over 10 years ago. We feel there's a lot more potential, obviously. And as well, you've got this ophiolite belt in the southern part of the license, never been looked at ever. And that in that belt that runs all for about 500 kilometers up the sort of northwestern arm of Oman, has over 150 VMS type anomalies, or even as part of those, there'll be some mines. There's definitely chromite, but there's possibility for PGMs and other good things. So I think we've got some great projects, a very commodity suite. We also, we're still in discussion with several other parties, both in Oman and Saudi Arabia, and actually the whole region's opening up as well. I mean, we've had some interest from UAE, as much investors looking to pick up projects that we can then provide the technical support on. So I think we sort of dug our heels in when we started. A lot of people thought we were behind the eight ball. We were too late coming in, but I think we've stuck at it really hard, and we're seeing the initial fruits of our labor. And I believe that we're going to, as we show everyone that it's not just words on or documents on a piece of paper, we're getting results of doing work, that this will increase exponentially over the coming year, 18 months.
Sure. Thanks for that roundup there. It's always interesting because when you look at the sort of Arabian Peninsula and the Gulf, you think of oil and gas and, hydrocarbon, gargantuan fields, but just how easy is it to deal with the, the sort of the Saudis, and also tell us just how rich they are in minerals and assets. You've mentioned copper there, you've mentioned nickel sulfide. What other minerals are they rich in out there?
Obviously, it's a oil and gas world up to probably a few years ago, with then the realization that actually there's a huge value in the minerals in the ground and also in the downstream. I mean, one of the key things in Saudi Arabia is almost there's more emphasis on downstream, setting up plants, refineries, producing. I think EVM are an example, putting in a lithium battery processing facility in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, they have the infrastructure, they have the power, the utilities, and the willingness, and of course they have the funding, government funding in there. Look, they're really sophisticated people to deal with. We've had some fantastic connections with people in ministries, individuals, groups, and we've found, yes, the wheels might be a bit dead. They're sort of greasing the wheels because it is a big new venture, and I think honestly they've probably been overwhelmed a bit more than they expected. So their inboxes will be sort of 3 times the normal size, so things can take a little bit longer than expected. But I think they're learning really well, and I think, as I say, with an example with the AMAC deal, just to be clear, the AMAC group and actually the chairman himself was very keen to ensure that the Ministry of Mines ratified the agreement to make sure that this was part of the sort of larger strategy, and that was done, I think, on actually almost at the end of the day, a personal call, but it was ratified, which is really encouraging for us because it means we're sort of on that radar, but it is working. Yeah, the system is getting there, and there are larger groups already out there, as we know. On a much bigger, more than mining. The hundreds of millions of dollars worth more on the mining projects. However, the exploration people, I'd like to think they're starting to realize that the exploration's got to be done. You can't just go and find a mine in 5 minutes. It doesn't by magic. So, and people like Power Metal and the team we've got and the team we build and we're building will significantly add to that. And frankly, we're now sitting with 15 EVM licenses, the main license with AMAC. Hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll get 2 or 3 more up and running through our MOU in Saudi Arabia. I mean, we'll be operating and working on over 20 exploration licenses, which is going to put us on one of the, maybe one of the top 10 groups in the kingdom who are actually have exploration projects. And I think, as I say, with quality work we're going to do and results and reporting, I would like to hope that that's going to expand quite quickly as people realize what we're about and that we are actually getting on with it. Commodity-wise, yeah, gold, there is quite a lot of gold. As I mentioned at the beginning, Ma'aden, the sort of state mining company, they're currently mining at least two gold mines and looking at, I think they've made a recent discovery, but again, time from discovery to go into production could be, it's slightly a piece of string, not knowing the details, although they'll definitely, I suspect, have the funding to move on that. There's, phosphate, potash, bauxite. Bauxite, I believe they have some. They also import because they have huge alumina and aluminium processing facilities. And just to add, as part of all this, we also got involved with a group called GSA Environmental that actually Power Metal Resources acquired 75% earlier in the year. And one of the synergies there was working in Saudi Arabia on reprocessing of industrial waste, such as ash produced from their power stations, because they're all run off, obviously, heavy fuel oil, because that's sort of, in some ways, it's almost...
Bill, when you've dealt with these, the Saudi guys, and it's been made a third pillar in this kingdom, do you feel like, regardless of what's going to proceed, they're going to sort this out? Like, they're going for a big style or not?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, another example might be people out there who've been to the Future Minerals Forum conference in Riyadh in January. They have their 4th one coming up in January. I've had the pleasure. I've been to all 3, although the second one I couldn't attend due to COVID, so I attended obviously online. That is a phenomenal annual conference now that is sponsored by the government. It's not a private operation. It's sponsored by the government. I think last year there were 18,000 attendees over, it was only 2 days actually. They have a ministerial day the first day. They continue to driving this forward. There's also, just I should add, they've offered a grant for exploration, early stage exploration, EEP, which we applied on the EVM RUAC projects, and we were awarded, we were successful in that grant. And that can be up to $2 million per license. It is graded, so you don't get the full amount, but it covers certain amount of technical work, very much salaries, encouragement for local employment and local training as well, because you can learn, obviously you can sit in a university and do a degree, but it gets quite different when you're outstanding on a hill and saying, right, now we need to understand what's going on here.
Bill, one last question. The GSA thing where we're going to be taking the sud from the power stations and various other waste.
Yep.
When do you perceive that will add to the bottom line of Power Metal Resources? Because that was one of the big things.
Sure.
That I remember talking to Shaun about sort of 12 months plus ago. That as that progresses, you're going to be paying back GSA money, and then it's going to start being a kicker into Power Metal Resources, and maybe you can come in here as well, Shaun. When do you think that's likely to happen?
Well, we're working hard on that. I'm involved in GSA. Well, obviously this is a podcast, but I've got my GSA shirt on. I'm actually in the lab today. We have current work going on in 2 projects in Saudi Arabia. One is for the ash project. Another one is actually for the red mud and the phosphogypsum that are waste streams that have, rare earths, vanadium, chrome, nickel, niobium, scandium, some phenomenal amounts as well. So those are ongoing. We're doing other projects here in the UK as well, which is great. I would like to think in 6 to 12 months' time, we are moving in very much the right direction and starting to both start building some of these projects, and the turnaround to get to some significant income will come when these projects are in production, which will be another, I want to see, a couple of years down the line. However, once that offtake is signed for sourcing the material and the construction is going ahead, then you have that runway to significant income further down.
Well, I was just going to finish on that point, because I think, we the way we look at GSA is, as Bill said, there's a fantastic potential. There's a lot of opportunity, a lot of discussions going on, but we've set it up as a purchase, which is almost like an option. We've not spent very much money. We pay. I think we've seen how the payments will break down over time as the business makes money. So at the moment, I'm not setting, or don't want to set particularly specific expectations on it, because these are complex projects we're talking about. They take a lot of negotiation and time, and I think that there are so many clear value elements to the power metal story. GMET we've talked about, UK we've talked about, we've talked about. I know those are things that I think investors can really hang their hat on and do a really gross value. I think as far as GSA is concerned, I regard this very much as the gravy. When it comes, we're sure it's going to be extremely significant. But I think from a point of view of setting sort of amounts and timescales and margins and what have you, I'm not sure that would necessarily be very helpful, because what we'd like to do, as we'd like to do across the business, is to under-promise and deliver, and to give investors something really to get optimistic about. I think, especially with the markets as they are, it would be, I think it's just very tempting, but it's very dangerous to try and get your share price moving by saying you're going to be a millionaire next week, because there's all these things are happening. We've got to be pragmatic and realistic, deliver on what we're doing, keep doing that, keep doing these very value accretive deals. I've been around stock markets a very long time. Over time, the market will catch up. And we're more convinced than ever that we've got the right model, that we've got the right people in place, we've got the right projects. And I think hopefully what people are seeing from this message, or this call, has been the strength and depth we've got in the team, and the experience that we've got delivering on these projects. So I hope that's helped, and I hope that people have got a lot out of it. We're obviously all individually happy to engage if there are any specific questions on anything we've talked about, and obviously either through me or individually, people are very welcome to get in touch.
Okay, I think we've talked enough there. I just want to say, obviously, thanks Shaun, thanks Bill, thanks Oliver, and thanks Jack for your time and appearing on the podcast.
Thanks very much.
Thanks. Appreciate it, gents.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. And I think we could do a podcast with each one of you individually, and maybe that's something that we should do as we move forward over the next few months. I mean, we're obviously doing it with Oliver already. Bill, we'll have to get you on and drill you a bit more in terms of the Saudi stuff. And the same for you, Jack. As results come in, we will start to talk in more depth about the individual things. So thanks for your time, guys. And
thanks, everyone.
Look forward to speaking to you.
Thanks, Jen. Take care. Cheers.
Have a nice day.
And on to our second guest this week. We're joined by Shaun Day, MD of Greatland Gold. Welcome back, Shaun. How's life treating you?
Really well, thanks, Phil. Good to see you both and Kevin. But yeah, no, pretty rapt to have completed the transaction, including raising the equity, and now we're in the home stretch to reach completion.
Absolutely. I mean, since you've last been on, obviously, we saw the company make the announcement that it's made significant progress towards completing the acquisition of a 70% interest in the Havieron gold copper project and 100% ownership of the Telfer gold copper mine from Newmont Corporation. Key conditions for the acquisition include the successful remediation of Telfer's tailings storage facility, TSF8, and the restart of processing operations. Newmont has informed Greatland that the remediation work has been completed and the prohibition notice on TSF8 has been lifted, with tailings deposition started on the 23rd of September 2024. While all conditions have not yet been fully satisfied, completion of the acquisition is targeted for Q4 2024. Sounds like things are moving pretty quickly there, Shaun. Just talk us through the details of this remediation work and what exactly has been involved.
Look, just to take people back, when Newmont acquired Newcrest, they took over the Telfer asset, and they made a decision to voluntarily stop deposition into the new tailings dam, into TSF8. They did that because it wasn't operating under Newcrest ownership in compliance with its own operating manual. I think Newmont are, tier one operators and were uncomfortable with that. As they've done that, they've ended up wanting to do three elements to it. They've, after some technical studies, they've wanted to move the decant jetty back to its original design position, because it wasn't in that when, again, I don't know the mind of Newmont, but it wasn't where it was designed to be. They wanted to resculpt the surface of the TSF8 to effectively make it concave, such that it ponds in the middle. That means it ponds around that decant, which then draws out the water, allowing you to recycle it through the processing plant, but importantly also getting moisture out of the tails dam. And then thirdly, they tested the wall perimeter. What they found is that southern wall where ponding had been allowed was actually softer than expected. They went through that. The root cause was allowing ponding on that southern wall. But when they reviewed that, again, it hadn't been built to specifications. So Newmont basically cut back that entire southern wall and rebuilt it, which is just a credit to their organisation that they really kind of rebuilt this from first principles. So what we take over now is really better than it was ever even designed to be. So we're deeply grateful for the work and the technical expertise that Newmont has applied to it. And again, I couldn't talk more highly of Newmont as an organisation.
Okay, I'm just trying to picture the operations there at Telfer and these tailings storage facility. So do you want to just talk the listeners through the sort of operations in terms of processing that's going to go on? Presumably it's a fine tailings with obviously a gold concentration in there, but how do you extract the gold from those tailings and put them through a processing? Will it be sort of leaching? Will it be glycine used, bio-leaching? Just talk us through the process to getting that gold concentrate out the other end.
Yeah, no, look, Telfer is a very standard processing plant. So there's two parallel 10 million tonne trains to take you to a total of 20 million tonnes. It's effectively a carbon in leach circuit. And what you're doing is initially pulling out a doré. So that's where you create those kind of gold bars. And then we take them to the Perth Mint in Australia to be refined to a kind of a 5 nines gold. That's, 99.999 gold. And then the second part of the circuit just continues that flow. It captures the copper. It also captures part of that gold, and that becomes a copper gold concentrate. And then we separately sell that concentrate into separate refineries that focus on those copper concentrates.
Presumably they can do some sort of electro-winning and produce a cathode from that concentrate at that point, with obviously copper being nearly 10,000. There's a good amount of money in that from an LME perspective.
Yeah, correct. We're really fortunate to have both gold and copper. And if you look at the global copper concentrate market, it's kind of in short position, i.e. there's not enough copper concentrate in the world for all the refineries that have been built. So what that means is it's a really good time in the market to be selling a copper concentrate. So this is positive for us.
Well, Shaun, I'm sure it's been whirlwind the last 2 or 3 months. So now the leaves are starting to settle on the ground. Maybe not in Florida, but certainly where we are. So where do you see Telfer going from here? If Telfer was its own business, okay, we'll put Havieron to one side. How are you going to progress Telfer so it continues to have enough ore and enough processing capacity to produce the sort of revenue that you're going to have from the stockpiles that exist?
Thanks, Kevin. Look, I'll answer that in 3 parts. But, firstly, look, there's no shortage of processing capacity at Telfer. This is Australia's second largest gold processing facility behind Cadia in New South Wales. So we have an abundance of infrastructure. So that's really positive. And it being in 2 10 million tonne trains, is good because it gives us flexibility about how we use that infrastructure. The second element to your question is about how do we kind of run Telfer as a standalone. So we expect to come out in the March quarter of 2025, so not long away, with an updated JORC resource on what's at Telfer, and then around 3 months later come out with a JORC reserve. That reserve will very much translate into the extension of mine life, which we hope to deliver beyond that initial 15 months of demonstrated mine life in the technical report, in that SRK report that we released as part of our readmission document. Plus, remember, there's still about 21 million tonnes of gold of stockpiles at surface. In total, with that 30 million tonnes, that's around 500,000 ounces of gold at surface. So, we're really excited about the prospect that affords us, but we're going to continue to invest in that mine plan. But this combination of a really strong gold price together with kind of just a company coming in with a willingness to revisit, we think gives us a lot of confidence that we can deliver a extension of the Telfer mine life. And then the third part to my answer is, of course, Telfer isn't standalone now. We will run it fully integrated with Havieron, which gives us a huge advantage because you have that base Havieron feed, which means Telfer has to do less work. And when it does less work, you're not racing just to keep up with your mill capacity. You can actually be more selective in your mining, and those tonnes that you do identify, you can extend over a much longer life because they're augmented by what you bring in from Havieron. So we think the sum of the parts here, that the whole is actually worth more than the sum of the parts.
Yeah, no, I can see that if you could get Telfer extended out to 3, 4, 5 years, it could actually be 10, 12, 15 years as a supplement to Havieron in terms of the resource. That's basically what you're saying, obviously, without numbers or without years.
Yeah. Without kind of trying to give any guidance on time frames, how you describe that is conceptually how we think about it.
Yeah, okay. What is the situation then with the trains in terms of there's 2 trains? How are they going to work in terms of Havieron? How are you going to connect the pieces, if you like?
Look, it's a truck haul from Havieron to Telfer down a bitumised road. That's all kind of embedded in the cost structure and the capex that we envisage. That's quite an efficient haul, and that way we don't have to build a separate mill at Havieron. We effectively just have what I might just kind of loosely describe as a Telfer ore stockpile and a Havieron ore stockpile, and we will batch those through. So on one swing, which is the time one group of staff spend at site, we'll probably run Havieron ore, and then on the next swing, we'll run Telfer ore. And the only reason we don't combine them, because they're very similar ores. They have the same metallogenesis. They came from the same mobilization under the Earth's surface. But what we actually do to get the better recoveries at Havieron is we actually grind that ore, or we mill it a little bit finer, and that costs a little bit more in terms of power and greater time in the mill. So there's no need to overgrind that Telfer ore. So what we want to do is keep those 2 separate and do a little bit more milling on the Havieron ore, a little less on the Telfer, and that's the optimized way in terms of mill throughput, but also in power cost.
So from the point of view, I mean, I'm sure you've been extremely flat out busy trying to sort this deal out, and you know what you're trying to do with Telfer and obviously Havieron in terms of when it comes on stream, maybe in 2027. 2 parts to the question. First, are we going to get an upgrade in resource from Havieron anytime soon? And secondly, there's lots of opportunities now, surely, with the size you're going to be, the opportunities you're going to be for other assets in and around the Patterson that can, increase the mine length of Telfer, the processing, etc., way beyond maybe even your lifetime. So is this something that Greatland would be looking to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So the first part of your question around resource, I think even better than that, when we come out with the updated feasibility study or the feasibility study in 2025, that will come out with an updated reserve. I think that's even more exciting because, of course, the reserve actually reflects what you intend to mine. There'll be some movement in the resource, but I think the real focus will be on that change to reserve. Secondly, look, we already are blessed with this 20-year mine life at Havieron. That takes us out to, say 2047. That seems a long way away. So I love Greatland. Not sure I'm going to be here in the year 2047. So look,
I know I
think
won't be interviewing you then. I can promise you that.
I think it will
the running up,
see
Shaun.
three
Keep the
of us
fitness
off.
up, and you may well be there.
Yeah, no, look, that's actually very good advice. I think, Phil, if I do the right cardio program, I can be here in 2048. So maybe that's a goal for us all.
So we've got some questions from a few listeners and Telegram groups. If you're happy to answer a few of them. So James asked first, have both trains run for 14 consecutive days?
Look, we don't necessarily want to get into the ins and outs of individual conditions precedent, but we're really pleased with what's happening at site. What you'll normally do when you turn those things on is then you'll pause them and go and service pumps and some of the seals and things like that. So, and this is one of the lovely things about the 14 days, is it's really incumbent on Newmont to do a lot of that work for us. Now, that's great because, they get that circuit up and running, and by the time we take it over, it will be kind of steady state commercial production, which we think is hugely attractive.
Sure. And then we've got Dip and Tim pretty much asking the same question. I mean, in the RNS, it obviously alluded to the acquisition targeted for Q4, but they're saying, is early November still a realistic target for the completion and acquisition with Newmont?
Look, I think our official guidance remains Q4. We think that's achievable. But look, we're chomping at the bit if that expression translates into the UK to take this over. And if we can do early November, we will love to. Look, I'm not, to maybe blend it into the last question, I doubt that's going to be a processing concern or the 14 consecutive days. It's all the licensing movements, the transfer and the novation of contracts. There's a lot of work to do, so there's kind of a small army of lawyers kind of working on all that, but that's probably realistically the lead time. And some items that we thought would be long lead time have actually happened really quickly, so that's positive. But it's not done until they're all done.
Sure. Then we've got Sally asking, do you expect Telfer to still be producing in 10 years based on your experience with Northern Star?
Well, again, it's a lovely question, but maybe the way I'll answer that is Northern Star bought 6 assets from majors. My recollection is probably 4 of them had a mine life around or less than 12 months when we acquired them. All of those assets are still operating 10 years later. So there's certainly form where you might expect that's possible. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it will be running at 20 million tonnes per annum, but I think at a higher gold price that we currently observe, I think and augmented by the Havieron ore feed, I think there's lots of a basis to be optimistic about what can be achieved.
Sure. And then a good one, and we've already talked about the copper. So Sally asked, does the Telfer all-in sustaining costs of $14.54 include copper credits?
Yes, it would. Yes, so that reflects effectively. You think about it as that is the price of producing an ounce of gold. That is a fantastic margin. I think today, it's $2,600 US gold, producing it at $14.50. That still leaves a lot of US dollar margin gold. So we're excited about that prospect.
So what is the differential in copper credit from the potential Telfer ore and the Havieron ore?
Pretty similar, and ore bodies are not homogeneous, so there can be some kind of ebb and flow. But again, I talked about the metallogenesis of both deposits being the same. They're about 80% gold, 20% copper, and that holds true for both ore bodies. Just you've got the high grade at Havieron. That's probably the most, that's probably the difference you observe.
Okay. And then we've got a question from our resident analyst, cheeky chappy, Charles Archer. You obviously met him last time. He said, Greatland is surrounded by neighbours advertising their tenure as the next potential Havieron. Well, there's only one Havieron. Which neighbour do you think is the most prospective?
Oh, look, I hope they are all super prospective.
I knew it stumbled.
Don't even answer, Shaun. Be quiet. There's no point in even saying a word. That's a stupid question, Charles Archer, and he's never going to answer that question.
But you're right. But what I will say is we hold the infrastructure. So whoever is successful in exploration will probably end up having a discussion with us, which is brilliant. So I'm rooting for them all.
Did you see the rock chips from Artemis? 556,000 grams per ton.
No, I did not. Is that from the Patterson or somewhere else?
It might be somewhere else, but the fact of the matter is it looks like somebody's just gone and picked up a big block of gold quartz.
Look, hopefully, I shouldn't have. I should have just accepted that and said that sounds fantastic. So, good on them.
Yeah, but if it is from the Patterson, I'll be looking it up.
It's West Pilbara. West Pilbara.
West Pilbara. Yeah, look, one swallow does not a summer make, but that's obviously positive.
Well, unless somebody dropped a big coin out of their pocket, it's got to come from somewhere. It's actually the second reading they've had over 100,000 grams per ton. They had one previously, and now this is the second rock chip that they've got. So either somebody's dropping gold out their pocket, or it's come through some quartz veins.
It reminds me of that movie Gold, where he's shaving his gold wedding ring into the assay samples.
So I'm not. I can't speak with an informed way into that. I haven't looked at it, but please for them if it's a positive result.
Yeah, indeed. So
maybe the only thing I observe is the ALTM deal where GZing kind of bought the other Newmont asset across there in Ghana. It's interesting. Some of the research I've read describes that they bought that about 1.46 times PNAV. By contrast, we bought our asset in that same research at about 0.26 times PNAV. About 1/6. I don't think that's fully resonated with the UK market just yet. And look, there's differences in assets. One ratio is not completely comparable across two assets, but I think it does talk to the opportunity and the value equation ahead of us.
So are you trying to say that your share price is very cheap? Because I think that's what you're trying to say, and I'm trying to say the same thing as well. I think we're in a period of time where few people have taken their 20-30% and said thank you very much. They're also waiting for the final boom. It is completely done, and the farm is all yours. And then we will openly talk more about valuations, I think, in the future. But less to say that you're in a situation now where you've moved from an explorer who is trying to create a mine to a producer within 2 months.
It's nice to move across that valley on the Lassonde curve, and get into the producer area on the curve. So there's a lot of positive out of this, I feel.
Yeah, and there's only one way that curve goes from here.
Okay. On that note,
I can't possibly comment.
Okay, well, on that note, we'll say Shaun Day, MD of Greatland Gold, thanks very much for appearing on the podcast.
Hey, Phil and Kevin, thanks for your time. And as always, really appreciate being on the Sunday Roast.
So let's have a look at some of the movers and shakers of this week. The best performer I can see on SharePad on the week is EPP, Energy Pathways, up 60% on the week. It's had a really good run, hasn't it? It just feels like it has moved on very well after the news of progress there, and all the obviously there's been news as well out and in the broader news about the government and the funding of there's 22 billion into obviously cleaner energies, so that one moved well. What did you make of the move? I mean, it's not back. I think we were talking about this last week, weren't we? That it is not actually back yet to its original IPO price of something like 4.15, if I remember, or 4.05. You might want to clarify that, but certainly it's finished the week around the 3.5 to 3.6 pence mark. So it's not even back to the IPO.
Yeah, it's around 4p. I'm not exactly sure whether it was 4p or 4.1p. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, the scenario is now with the loan in place, the ability to have the storage and get the gas out, obviously, which we didn't really talk about that much on the podcast. And the big players involved in this, there's going to be some huge multinationals that are thinking we need to be part of this situation. You know, the whole project itself could be worth, in the billions, I think, not hundreds of millions. So yeah, it's looking very positive. Obviously, Ben knows what he's doing. He's been involved in these gas things before, and in this particular area as well. So he's well aware of what's going on. So yeah, people are starting to wake up, I think.
Yeah. The other one that moved very well was COBR Resources. That's up some 25%. It just seemed, I mean, the last bit of news they had was at the beginning of October, actually on the 1st of October, which was the ISR, the In Situ Recovery Bench Scale Study, delivering the exceptional results. I'd like to catch up with Rupert at some point and just to go through that and just to sort of bring it back again to the fore, because I do feel this is one company that has some very interesting technologies for this recovery process for these these magnetic metals, as they call, or magnetic rare earth oxides, MREOs. What do you make of that? It is nice to see it moving and adding a bit of value to it.
Yeah, I mean, we use the word massively far too much, but it is massively undervalued, even after this move. You know, the gold project that they've got is, from our calculations, worth a couple of times the share price, maybe more. And this rare earths could be sky's the limit, basically, in terms of it looks like it's a huge project. The in situ recoveries are looking extremely good. There's going to be demand for this stuff, without doubt. Again, we go down the same theme time and time and time and time again. China has control of these markets, right? The rest of the world needs a resource from somewhere that isn't China. You know, we talk about it in tungsten with GMET. We talked about it for the lithium in different places. We talked about the graphite with SVML, Sovereign Metals. We talked about the titanium oxide, which China also controls the vast majority of the things. The rest of the world needs to wake up, because all of these resources are required. And China controls the vast majority of them, 70, 80, even 90% in a lot of places. So we need to be backing the companies that have got these resources outside of China and are going to be able to help. COBR Resources is going to be one of those, I'm pretty sure. And it looks like it's becoming more and more and more de-risked, and therefore you see this in the price. I have spoken, or messaged, I should say, with Rupert. And we are going to get talking to him, I would imagine now, hopefully next week. We'll put something out.
Very good. Yeah, the other mover was up some 20%, was First Class Metals. Obviously, we've spoken to Mark and James before. They announced that the 79th GRP Limited has increased its loan to the company by £270,000, raising the total loan facility to £500,000. The further funding strengthens the partnership between the two companies and will be used to accelerate exploration at FCM's North Hemlo and Sunbeam properties. The loan is secured, carries 15% annual interest, and is repayable by May 2025. Chairman James Knowles highlighted the growing collaboration with 79th Group as a strategic move to unlock value in the company's assets. So again, that one dropped back a lot, didn't it, of late? And it's nice to see it moving back, back upwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it raised to 2.8 and 2.7p. It was down there even below the 2p mark, I think, and has now moved back up into the twos. A long way to go. I think their assets are worth significantly more than than the share price at the minute. But again, this is the state of the market, isn't it? The market's punishing anybody. But there they are now. They're sitting with cash. And again, non-dilutive in this case, sitting with cash. And this group has already bought assets off them. So who says it's going to be paid back in cash? It's more likely to be paid back in assets, in my view. What those assets will be or what JV there will be, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's my my speculation on it. Anyway.
Yeah.
And we're waiting on results now, aren't we? So, the Hemlo gold part of Hemlo. And understand as well, Hemlo is massive. Hemlo is a massive area. And it not only has the gold, it has other assets that are potentially within there as well. And I think I heard some report, was it from Palm, that they did some work that then backed onto what the first class metals is as well. So there's some interesting things going on there in Ontario.
Yeah. In terms of shakers, the biggest fall of this week was In Spirit Energy, down some 60% on the news that the company's to become an AIM cash shell. The board completed the review and concluded that it should now focus its energies on preserving its existing cash balances to pursue other opportunities, and as such, with immediate effect, becoming an AIM Rule 15 cash shell. In the meantime, the company will seek to realise value from the IP developed to date if it can. So, big drop on that one. In terms of majors, Rio Tinto, this was big news. Obviously, Rio agreed to acquire the US-based ASX-listed Arcadium Lithium for $6.7 billion, which was some 90% premium to the at $5.85 per share, giving Rio access to lithium mines and processing facilities in Argentina, Australia, Canada, and the US, with key customers like Tesla, BMW, and General Motors. While lithium prices have slumped due to oversupply, Rio expects a supply shortfall by the decade's end, driven by growing demand from electric vehicles. The acquisition is set to close by mid-2025, positioning Rio for long-term growth in battery-grade lithium. So, very, very big news, that one. That's basically now Rio is going to become the world's third largest lithium miner. And it's interesting because we see this come at a time when we've been to Rwanda. We saw the fact that Rio came into Havieron or invested as a joint venture partner on the HCK asset, which is down in the south of Rwanda, bordering there with Burundi. And it just interesting that they're actually now starting to acquire companies when lithium is as we've seen, as you say, it's dropped massive oversupply, so the prices went through the floor. What do you make of that acquisition?
Yeah, well, if you're brave, you buy when it's low, don't you? Even though they paid a 90% premium, I haven't looked at it, I have to be honest, but I need to look at it. I wonder what the high price of that company was over in like two years ago when lithium was booming. I wonder what the price was and what price they paid in relation to that, if you like. Yeah, I mean, it gives you the scenario. You got Ethereum worth in the single digit millions, and a deal with the same company that's just paid 1.9 billion for lithium assets. Sometimes we have to wake up and realize what's involved here. It's definitely lithium.
Just out of interest. So you said that. So they were around the $3.80, and the offer price, as I just said, was $5.85, so $5.85, and the 52-week high for Arcadium Lithium was 1855, and that was on the 28th of December last year.
$18.55.
$18.55, and the low was 226.5 on the 6th of September this year. So it's effectively done, well over 100% since the lows.
But basically, they've paid about 25% of the 12-month high. And that probably isn't the all-time high, because if you go back further, the all-time high is probably higher than that. So, what are Rio doing? Rio are buying at lows and saying, yeah, we're taking a 10, 15, 20-year view on this, and you need lithium, and they're right. So maybe it's a good deal for Rio in the grand scheme of things.
If I look back to just over a year, in July of last year, it was trading at $28 to $29 a share.
So they paid less than 20%. 20% of its time when lithium was at a higher price. So looks like it's a good deal. It's probably not I don't know whether the shareholders will be happy, but the fact is the 90% premium in the context of what the price of that share was is not exactly over the top.
Any others on your list? Anything you want to talk about?
Not really, to be honest, because I haven't really been watching a great deal. I think people need to really take a strong look at this electric guitar. We saw and spoke with John during the week, John Regan, and we'd intimated that they had a deal with MasterCard, and now it's been said MasterCard wouldn't let them RNS it because they didn't want the publicity, but they allowed them to put it on LinkedIn and on X. But they've just signed a deal with MasterCard for the whole world, and they've got a market cap of a couple of million quid. So have a listen to what John had to say. There's been some interesting news I've seen on Twitter, or X as it's now called, on LinkedIn. It seems like you have got a worldwide deal with that company that isn't Visa. So what would you like to say about that one? Because that's rather spectacular, I would suggest.
It is a big development. Look, we can name them now because very kindly they gave us permission. As long as we kept things very low key, they've given us permission to talk about them on social media and potentially on blogs and things like that with our clients and to promote the product. So we can name them. It's MasterCard. We have an existing relationship with MasterCard in APAC. So we've been working with their sales team to sell our products to help their clients promote the use of MasterCards. And we've now expanded that relationship so that we're able to work globally with them. And what we've also done is integrated that with their technology platform, SessionM. So it's now very easy for MasterCard clients to use that technology. And I think, one thing I would stress, you've picked it up on LinkedIn, Phil, this is something that we are keeping very low key at their request because they are very sensitive. They did us a big favor by allowing us to promote it on social media, primarily to attract business and explain the benefits to their clients. But yes, it's significant for us.
Yeah. So just go through that news, John, because obviously this is effectively 3 Radical being easily integrated with MasterCard's what they call the SessionM loyalty platform, which is effectively a CRM platform, which obviously makes it more convenient to gamify the loyalty for clients around the world and drive deeper engagement. So just talk how significant this is in terms of helping not only yourself, 3 Radical, but also MasterCard and then their clients.
Well, the SessionM, the technology platform, its function is to allow, as you say, anyone who is a provider of a MasterCard to promote the use of that MasterCard using their customer data. So MasterCard clients upload their customer data onto SessionM. And of course, that has all sorts of real-time interactions within that data set, which means that their clients can really understand who they need to target to and how to target them to generate that kind of interaction. What we've done is we've put an additional layer on there with 3 Radical VOCO platform, which means that one of the promotions they can use and one of the things they can do to drive engagement is use our gamification technology. And the reason it's very significant and helpful to SessionM clients is because it's within their system now. So what that means is, of course, it's 1 or 2 clicks and the integration is there. It means that the 3 Radical platform, VOCO, can take information from the CRM system to understand what type of experience and what type of offer to deploy and push information straight back as well, which means that it can react in real time. So that could go 2 ways. Immediately you could see that, John is there and about to engage with something, and 3 Radical might pull from the CRM system information that says, look, John's a premium client, so give him a premium offer. And at the same time, once that engagement is finished, it can push that back and say, this is what John's just told us. He's in the market to buy X, Y, and Z. And then they can, from their CRM system, immediately send John the relevant offer. So you can see how those 2 things integrate very nicely for those clients and can really generate a big uplift in the type of loyalty that they can create.
So with somewhere in the region of 3 billion cards in issue with MasterCard and 30,000 employees in MasterCard, you are talking about a huge amount of data that's going to be going through 3 Radical. Surely this is going to fundamentally change the finances of 3 Radical.
Well, we have to work on a client-by-client basis with SessionM because, of course, this is first-party data that we're talking about. And so, if we are processing data on behalf of SessionM clients, we need to do it with their clear permission, and they need to be comfortable that we are compliant with the data, with whatever the local data protection regulation is, whether that's GDPR or CCPA or the Asian regulations as well. So it is a client-by-client basis. But, of course, that's still very, very beneficial for us and very beneficial for the clients. The key thing there is the smoothness of the integration. It's just straightforward to do. And of course, yes, over time, we always iterate our products and learn from what we've done before. So there's a benefit there. The more clients we work with, the better we can make the products work.
And from a financial perspective, how will you benefit from doing this with MasterCard? Forget about MasterCard, whether it's MasterCard or an other business.
Mm-hmm.
Each time somebody uses this system, you get a very small payment. Is this how it works, or is it based on a general payment that they make to you?
No, the way it works, again, is client by client, and you're exactly right. We get paid based on the volume of clients or by the volume of their customers going through our system. So the benefit to us is a benefit which I don't want to make a forward-looking statement and forecast any kind of revenue, but more access that we get to customers, of course, the more customers we can win. So the benefit here is clearly, if it's a very easy implementation and they're already on the platform, then it's much easier to sell to those businesses. The barriers are much lower for us.
Okay, and we also saw Extract have some news this week. They signed an exclusive collaboration agreement with Chilibwe Mining for the large-scale exploration license 22118 HQ Aliali in Zambia, which covers some 27,000 hectares. Extract will earn a 25% shareholding in Chilibwe Mining or a 25% interest in the project by preparing a work program and securing funding. The license, which expires in February 2025, includes cobalt, copper, gold, and nickel. Extract will assist Chilibwe exclusively for 24 months and will begin services within 15 days. If Chilibwe accepts outside funding during this period, it must pay Extract a $500,000 break fee and issue the agreed shareholding. So what did you make of that? It's another asset in Zambia there. We've obviously seen Silver King, Kikuyu, and obviously the Northwest Zambian licenses that Extract are working, getting more and more licenses all the time. But I noticed on that one, there was involved in some sort of legal dispute when it was under the Zambian court proceedings due to a conflict between Chilibwe and its previous JV partner. I think the litigation has obviously in the past prevented Chilibwe from progressing and development of the project. So it'd be interesting to see how that pans out, won't it, in terms of, I think the date is something around the end of November for the dispute and for the hearing. So what do you make of that one?
Yeah, it's another very, very prospective license in Zambia, not far from Mofalera, Luansobi, all around that same area towards the Congo border. So let's hear what Colin had to say in an excerpt from the podcast that we did with him. And if you find that interesting, then listen to it all on Audio Boom or on YouTube.
Well, the rationale is that the Chilibwe shareholders approached us and they've got a fiduciary duty, like it or not. There's a reference to a dispute they have with a third party. They've got a fiduciary, like it or not, to get on with things, because you cannot sit on a license if you're a license holder and say we're in dispute, because the license will tick on anyway. So they've got a duty of care to the company, fiduciary duty. They've got a duty to the license and the government and the ministry. And so they want to get on with life. They've recognized us as good partners in other parts of their life. And so they've requested that we assist them to do all the technical things necessary to progress the license, to find out its potential, to design development programs if appropriate, and to do everything that needs doing regarding that Chilibwe project. So we've taken on the job of doing it, and do it we will, because it's a great license. It's got a tremendous position. It's actually the center of a sandwich. There's operating mines. Some of them have been operating for years in the region. There's mines on the other side, on the frontier. So at the end of the day, you've got a very sort of, shall we say, predictable potential deposit in the middle of existing current mines in the traditional copper belt. So it really is a very, very, very good position relative to Mopani, Frontier, and other mines. Some of those mines were over 100 years long. They were old, so they're very, very big mines too.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing that we heard in the podcast, and we talked about, obviously that was RNS previously, was the fact that the Bushranger project in Australia, they'd done some metallurgical study, and basically they found that during different types of processing, the pre-screening gravity separation and coarse particle flotation, that they showed promising results. I think they recovered 78% of the copper into just 5% of the mass, which upgraded the copper grade from 0.19% to 2.8%. And this coarse particle flotation also outperformed conventional flotation by recovering 30% more copper. So what did you make of that? I mean, it seems that obviously as technology, advances and improves, they're using this special technology. I think it's called Nova Cell technology, and they can upgrade the copper grade from very low 0.19% up to 2.8%. So I think the whole project economics of Bushranger could potentially, of Racecourse, could potentially improve over time and become economically viable. What did you make of that?
Yeah, it sounds very, very good in terms of the ability to make Bushranger economical at a lower level. I mean, basically we're saying it's now 10,000 tons or $10,000 per ton for the copper would be break even. So we're not a million miles away from becoming economical now to start looking at this. We get 11, 12, 13, 14,000 ton copper, then Bushranger is going to be a huge project and it's going to go. So listen just briefly to what Colin had to say about Bushranger, and we'll leave it at that.
Well, our project was essentially, we got 1.3 million tons of contained copper, and it's completely open-ended whichever way you look, notwithstanding the contribution ASCAP can make, because the ASCAP section, of course, that too is open-ended. But the project, if you like, suffered from a commonality of grade of about 0.24, 0.25, that order. Very consistent, good long runs. And if one compares it to Jose Maria in Argentina, not dissimilar grades. And there's a company in the Lachlan Fold nearby, not so very far away, who are raising significant money to keep drilling with similar grades. So in actual fact, I know there's huge disappointment, Kevin, Phil, I know there's huge disappointment on Bushranger. But in actual fact, one shouldn't be, because I think it's going to be in the next generation of copper mines. Talked about the demand, and of course that demand will basically lower specs. So there's dynamics going there which work for the Bushranger project. But to answer your question specifically, Phil, it's not the aspect of the processing industry which is receiving more attention and more money is upgrading for this very reason. That marginal projects have to be brought into production, and then small scale projects which are remote from either plants or power also have to have small upgrading plants to bring them into play. So upgrading is a major part of our industry and processing industry, and the research being spent on it is huge at both ends, at the top end and at the bottom end, small projects, big projects. And so when you look at the results that you just articulated, it's very good. What it means is you can take this low-grade material and the footprint of the final flotation circuits and the concentrators and all of the big material, if you like, is in actual fact, a lot of costs are limited. The capital footprint goes down. When you get to the operating cost, that impacts upon the power. And so to upgrade and remove the waste prior to getting into the serious processing plant, to put it in layman's term, is a sensible thing to do. And so what we did, and we didn't spend more than $60,000, $70,000 doing it, was to look at all the alternatives that were available to upgrade. And of course, the one which came out best of all was the Nova Cell kinetic test work. And you just said what the results are, and they're extremely encouraging. As the project is now, the forecast, the spreadsheets, the financial spreadsheets are suggesting we want 10,000 to break even, sustained copper price. But at 11,000, it's got an NPV of around about, I think it's, I am talking off the top of my head, but in 370 million US dollars. If we start lowering that break-even price to 9,000, of course, the NPV will go up and the project will suddenly be a different project in entirety. So we're going to do more test work, more detailed test work. And if that continues to encourage us, that will be put into the spreadsheet, and we'll have a new financial model, a new technical model, and which might or might not encourage the market. The driver for this, will, of course, will be the industry's perception of sustainable copper price, and we all know that it's not going to stay at 9.5. When is it going to break out and go up to the sort of figures I'm talking? When will the industry get the confidence to actually invest in the perception of a continuing copper price that is around about 11,000? That remains to be seen. But I think the Bush Ranger is very far from dead.
So MAST Energy Developments also had a RNS in the week, and we obviously caught up with Peter Krugel who's there. So if you're interested in that company or a shareholder, then please do have a listen to the midweek takeaway we recorded. But yeah, basically they announced an update regarding the Pybridge 8.1 megawatt flexible power generation with their record high September revenues. They hit £86,000 before receipt of the embedded benefits. And the final revenue tally for August 2024 increased by 12% to circa 51,000. Average revenue per megawatt month for Q3 increases to 22,000. So I think if they can bring on the other the gen sets, obviously the second 2.7 megawatt gen set refurbishment is progressing, going according to plan, and then there's a third one. If they can bring the second and the third on and get those revenue numbers that they've reached for September for each one of those units, then this is going to become quite a profitable business.
Yeah, you're talking then about maybe as good as £2 to £2.5 million per annum in terms of revenue. And obviously, that's not profit, but the profit on that, I think he was talking in the 30% range and higher. So that then makes MAST totally self-sufficient on just the one site. And as he said in the podcast, which you can all listen to, the goal is 100 megawatts within a short period of time. And obviously, I think they now have the ability to get the financing for that with Riverthorpe backing them, and also banks will start to back them once that they can show and prove that they are able to stand on their own 2 feet. So I think if that happens, you're talking about a 100 megawatt company, even if they don't own all of the projects outright themselves because of the debt, I can see a lot of good stuff. Now, the interesting thing also was that Kibu are now out, and Riverthorpe basically took their shares as part of a debt that was owed by Kibu. So yeah, there you go. Why have you got rockets and bloody smiling faces going up?
I'm just playing with this React thing on Zoom where you click it and it's got like rockets, there's balloons. Look, I can send a balloon. There you go, some nice red balloon, 99 red balloon. It's just a little fun thing to do, while you're trimming your nails or whatever you're doing in the background. I can play.
No, I'm clipping the dog here.
Oh, okay. Is that what you call it? Is that a euphemism? So,
basically, I'm cutting the dog's hair.
God, you didn't say I'm trimming the pussy or something like that. You know what I mean? So anyway, based on that, I mean, I think that we've wrapped up there. It's been a very long podcast this week. We've had obviously a really good lowdown on power metals, obviously, and the Arabian Shield, and obviously the uranium assets with the gents there, and obviously Oliver on the whole Pilot Mountain. We've also had a great update from Shaun Day, and he's always a pleasure to talk to. Shaun, isn't he? He's always good for a laugh, and it's always good catching up with Shaun from down under. And we've wrapped up on the weekly movers and shakers. Anything else you want to add? What about some sport?
Yeah. Let's talk about the England cricket. 823 for 7 declared. Yeah. Root with 262. And his partner with 317, Brooke. My goodness, so 5 centuries between them.
Sorry, did Joe Root break Alistair Cook's record? Then he must have done, because yesterday when I saw it, he was 176, and he was well on his way to beating Cook.
I think so, but I don't know for sure. And then Pakistan. This is recorded long before it's finished, so we can't actually tell you the final result. Pakistan was 76 for 5. When this was recorded. So I'm assuming England, and they need 191 just to not get an innings defeat. So it looks like England are going to be cruising towards the first test win in Pakistan, which would be tremendous. Yeah. Football, we're on an international break, to be honest. So I don't really know. Ten
Hag looks like he's hanging in the balance, his job. There's lots of meetings apparently in the background.
Save Ten Hag, save Ten Hag, save Ten Hag. We love Ten Hag. Ten Hag's the best manager ever. We want to keep him.
Okay. So
I think that says everything.
Yeah, it says it all. I'm not, what will be will be. I mean, the other bit of news, we saw the end of an era, and it really is the end of an era because we've lost some of the absolute greats. We've lost Andy Murray, quit, didn't he? Announced his retirement, during the Olympics actually. Then we also saw Federer quit the game as well, which was obviously devastating. I just grew up watching him, and I watched him at Wimbledon play, and then we've known King of Clay has also announced he will retire from tennis at the end of the season. So yeah, Rafa Nadal, 22-time Grand Slam champion. He'll make his final appearance representing Spain in the Davis Cup finals in November. Obviously struggled with a lot of injuries over the past 2 years. Not surprising, he's 38 years of age. I mean, how many other sports do you get them playing at that level, at that age? I mean, Djokovic is probably one example of someone who has, similar age himself, but he keeps himself super, super, super fit. Nadal cited his physical limitations as the reason for a decision, and he's got 14 French Open titles, 4 US Opens, 2 Wimbledon titles, 2 Australian Opens, and Olympic gold medals. He's expressed his excitement about concluding his career by representing Spain, as I say, in the Davis Cup. So good luck to Rafa Nadal. I think he's been a great ambassador for the sport, just like all of them. He's like the sort of the four of the greats, when he had Murray, Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal, and I think we are literally seeing ushering in the new.
Good old Carlos Alcaraz.
Yeah, well, he's the new generation, isn't he?
He's the new generation.
And he
seems to like our Emma as well, doesn't he?
Jack Draper as well. He's done pretty well. He got through to the was it the semi-finals of the US Open this year? So Emma Raducanu.
But yeah, tennis will move on. Tennis is one of those games, isn't it? Comes and goes. I mean, I remember Bjorn Borg and McEnroe, and that tells me how old I am. And then Boris Becker came in and gave us a few years, and then got sent to prison for all sorts of stuff. So yeah, all good.
Yeah, I would recommend, if you get chance, anyone who loves these speeches, just do a search on YouTube for Federer. He did a commencement address at Dartmouth University in the US, and I think you've seen it as well. I think I sent it you a while ago, didn't I? Where he's there, they've given him an honorary sort of degree, as they bring in a lot of these sort of sports people and influential people, but it's very good, and he's got some amazing inspiring words for people who want to make it. He talks about the number of shots you make and the points you lose, and it's a very good speech. So I would urge people to listen to that. Any books you've been reading or anything, Kev, of late that you
I've been reading that Material World one that you gave me. I think it is. I'm up to oil now, so there's only one more to go after that. And we must get that guy on and interview him and do a podcast, because it's a fascinating story about the. It sends me to sleep when I'm reading it, because it's not exciting reading, but it is very interesting. So yeah, it's a book that we will definitely do a book review on it with him, and I'm looking forward to sharing it all with you, and then maybe you can all read it yourselves, because it's absolutely fascinating when you read it in terms of what we do, in terms of the resource space, and it's
interesting resources that you wouldn't even think about, that we take for granted, like the salts and the the glass and things like that, and the silicon. There's so many things that you think, actually, I did not realize that humans' dependence on some of these elements.
We're massively dependent on them. And I mean, the electric side of things with copper, you don't have electric if you don't have copper. It's as simple as that. So yes, you can substitute aluminium, and yes, you can also substitute silver, but obviously silver is incredibly expensive. Aluminium is not quite as good a conductivity as copper. So all of these things, just like my electricity went off a couple of hours ago when we were interviewing, and then it came back on again. Without the copper side of things, with the electric, it doesn't work. It's as simple as that.
Good. All right, well, let's wrap up. We've talked for long enough. We've had enough guests on, and if you like what you've heard, please do subscribe. It all helps. If you're listening on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon as well. Then you get any notifications of any future episodes. Thanks for listening, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.